People are completely shocked by how vibrant you look after everything you've survived. If you don't understand the spiritual mechanics of this, you will let energy vampires drain your vitality. I will teach you the transmutation routine to turn their toxic jealousy into literal fuel for your cellular glow. They watched your life crack open in places most people never recover from. They saw the losses, the humiliation, the loneliness, the kind of pain that is supposed to leave a permanent mark on your face. And somewhere in their mind, they expected you to come out diminished, slower, heavier, easier to read, easier to defeat. But then they see you now, and something does not add up for them, because after all that pressure, you do not look spiritually collapsed. You look clearer, softer in the face, lighter in the eyes, more alive in your own skin. Not because life was gentle with you, but because something inside you stopped cooperating with poison. That is what this message is about. There is a real cost to bitterness, and there is a real power in peace. What many people call glow is often what happens when a soul stops wrestling with darkness and starts metabolizing it. Peace isn't just an emotion, it is a biological preservative. Who recently did a double take when they saw how good you look? That reaction is not vanity. It is evidence. Something in you has been changing at the level of energy, stress, and spirit. And to understand why, we have to begin with the first truth. Jealousy does not only corrupt character, it also consumes the one carrying it. There is a reason some people seem to grow harder, duller, and more restless with time, even when they have all the external tools to appear polished. It is not always what they eat. It is not always their schedule. It is not always age itself. Sometimes it is the emotional climate they keep living inside. Jealousy is not a small emotion. It is not just a passing sting of comparison. When it becomes chronic, it changes the whole inner atmosphere of a person. It keeps the body in a state of silent agitation. It creates tension without release. It makes rest feel impossible because the mind is always measuring, resenting, watching, replaying. And that kind of bitterness has a cost. A person can smile in public and still be decaying in private from the stress of their own resentment. That is why you have to stop imagining jealousy as only a moral problem. It is also a physical burden. The body does not know how to carry hatred for free. Every recurring spike of bitterness asks the nervous system to stay activated. Every cycle of envy tells the body, over and over again, that it is under threat. Not a real physical threat in the room, but a perceived threat to identity, status, control, and self-worth. And the body still pays. Over time, that inner warfare starts showing up somewhere. It shows up in the tight face, the tired eyes, the inability to soften, the constant emotional friction, the restless energy that never feels settled, even in silence. This is why some people age from the inside out, long before time should have touched them that deeply. They are not only carrying their life, they are carrying resistance to someone else's life. And this is the part I really want you to hear. Their bitterness is already doing the work of punishment. You do not need to add revenge to the equation. That matters. Because when someone has tried to diminish you, misunderstand you, mock your growth, or secretly root for your collapse, the human instinct is to want balance restored. You want them to feel what they did. You want life to hand back the energy they sent out. You want proof that what happened was seen, that reaction is understandable. But revenge ties your nervous system to the very frequency that wounded you. The moment your healing becomes organized around their downfall, your body starts drinking from the same toxic well, maybe in a different form, maybe with better language, maybe with a spiritual explanation attached to it. But underneath it is still bondage. They remain in your field. They remain in your bloodstream. They remain in your thoughts longer than they deserve. And that is too expensive. One of the deepest shifts in healing is when you realize that not every injustice requires your personal retaliation. Some people are already living inside the consequence of who they have become. Imagine waking up every day needing to track someone else's light because your own inner world feels that empty. Imagine carrying so much comparison that another person's peace feels like an insult. Imagine being unable to celebrate, unable to rest, unable to feel whole unless somebody else is shrinking. That is not power. That is internal collapse, wearing a social mask. So when you see bitterness in someone, do not envy their position, and do not fear their attack more than necessary. Understand the cost of being them. This does not mean becoming naive. It does not mean letting harmful people stay close. It does not mean pretending envy cannot be dangerous. Jealous people can gossip, sabotage, manipulate, project, and create real disturbance. But beneath all of that behavior is still a person whose inner chemistry is being shaped by chronic unrest. And this is where your freedom begins, when you truly understand that bitterness depletes the one holding it. Something inside you relaxes. You stop performing for justice every minute of the day. You stop obsessing over whether their life looks better on the surface. You stop needing immediate visible consequences in order to trust that energy has weight. Because it does. Peace isn't just an emotion. It is a biological preservative, and bitterness is the opposite. Bitterness keeps the system inflamed. It keeps the face carrying battles long after the moment is over. It interrupts restoration. It disturbs sleep. It strains breath. It changes posture. It steals the softness that allows life to move through a person cleanly. Meanwhile, healing is doing the opposite work in you. When you grieve honestly, your body does not have to keep clenching around the pain. When you release what you cannot control, your system spends less time in emergency mode. When you stop feeding mental wars that never end, your energy can return to repair. Little by little, your face reflects less conflict. Your voice gets steadier. Your presence becomes less jagged. You start looking like someone whose spirit is no longer fighting itself every day. That is why your glow confuses people who expected damage to define you. They assumed pain would age you. What they did not understand is that processed pain can deepen you without hardening you. Suffering is not always what ages a person most. Sometimes it is unprocessed resentment. Sometimes it is chronic comparison. Sometimes it is the exhausting labor of pretending to be fine while quietly poisoning yourself with someone else's existence. You did not win because life was easy. You won because something in you chose not to become corrosive. That is the real divide. There are people who go through hardship and become permanently acidic. And there are people who go through hardship and become clear. Not because they enjoyed the pain, not because they are saints, but because at some point they understood that carrying poison longer would only extend the damage. So, release the fantasy that you need revenge in order to heal. Release the need to monitor their decline. Release the temptation to prove that they were wrong by staying psychically attached to them forever. Their bitterness is already costing them more than you can see. Your task is different. Your task is to stay available for restoration. Your task is to stop letting another person's envy become a second injury inside your own body. And once you understand that, you are ready for the next step. Because freedom is not only about refusing their poison, it is about learning how to convert what was sent toward you into strength that moves through you. Most people are never taught what to do with hostile energy once it reaches them. They are taught two extremes. Either absorb it and stay wounded by it, or throw it back and stay chained to it. But neither one is real power. Real power is transmutation, because the truth is, not every insult enters your life with the same purpose it had when it left someone else. What they send can arrive as poison, but it does not have to remain poison once it touches a regulated spirit. This is where your identity has to change. You are not a sponge. You are a reactor. A sponge takes in whatever is around it. It has no say in the exchange. It absorbs the room, absorbs the tone, absorbs the projection, absorbs the accusation, absorbs the tension, and then walks away, carrying all of it as if it belongs there. That is how many sensitive people live. They mistake openness for passivity. They confuse empathy with exposure, and then they wonder why one interaction can drain their whole day. But a reactor is different. A reactor receives force and changes its form. That does not mean denying what happened. It does not mean pretending words do not hurt. It does not mean becoming emotionally numb. It means the incoming energy is not given unrestricted access to your nervous system. It is met, interpreted, processed, and redirected before it becomes identity. That is the alchemical process. When someone throws jealousy, mockery, or spiritual contamination in your direction, they are often hoping for one of two results. They want you to shrink, or they want you to become reactive. They want your face to tighten. They want your peace to rupture. They want evidence that they got inside your field. That reaction is the meal. So the first shift is understanding this reaction is not always honesty. Sometimes reaction is an untrained energy system leaking under pressure. And once you understand that, you stop glorifying immediate emotional discharge as authenticity. You start asking a better question. Not, what did they say to me? But what am I going to make of what was said? That question changes everything, because now you are standing in authorship instead of impact. Now you are not just the site of injury. You are the site of conversion. Quick recap. You don't fight their poison. You process it into power. Here is what that can look like in real time. Someone speaks to you with contempt. You feel the hit in your chest. Maybe there is heat. Maybe there is tension in your jaw. Maybe your mind instantly starts building a defense case. In the past, that moment might have owned you. You might have ruminated for hours, replayed the scene, sharpened imaginary responses, and let their emotional debris spread through your body like smoke. Now you do something different. You pause long enough to notice where the energy landed, not the story, the sensation. You notice the pressure in the throat, the flutter in the stomach, the charge in the chest. You stay with the raw energy before the mind turns it into a whole self-concept. This matters because sensation moves more cleanly than narrative. The body can metabolize a wave of activation faster than the mind can metabolize a repeated insult. Then, instead of mentally swallowing their words, you visualize the incoming force as motion. See it like an arrow, a current, a spark. Anything that helps your mind stop personalizing it. Now, picture that force entering a chamber in the center of your body. somewhere around the chest or solar plexus. Not to wound you, but to be converted in that inner chamber. The energy is stripped of its message and reduced to its raw charge. The shame is removed. The accusation is removed. The disrespect is removed. What remains is intensity, heat, motion, life force, other label attached to it. And then you redirect it. You imagine that same energy moving outward through your spine, your posture, your breath, your clarity. Instead of collapsing your field, it strengthens your center. Instead of becoming self-doubt, it becomes steadiness. Instead of becoming anxiety, it becomes fuel for presence. This is not fantasy. This is training your mind and body to stop treating every hostile input as truth, because that is the real theft. The theft is not that someone projected onto you. The theft is when your own system starts acting as if their projection is valid enough to reorganize your peace. A lot of healing is learning how to interrupt that transfer. Simple viewer exercise. Smile gently right now and feel the tension leave your face. That small shift matters more than it looks. Because the face, yav, breath, and shoulders are often the first place hostile energy tries to establish residence. And when you soften on purpose, you send a signal to your own system. This will be processed, not stored. Now, let me make this even more practical. The next time someone's energy hits you, move through 4 quiet steps. First, name the force without dramatizing it. This is envy. This is projection. This is contempt. This is not the whole truth about me. Naming prevents fusion. Second, locate it in the body. Where did I tense? Where did I brace? Where did my energy start closing? Locating gives you a doorway. Third, breathe slowly enough to keep the charge moving. Not to suppress it, to circulate it. A long exhale tells the system there is no need to become a prison for this moment. Fourth, choose an output. More posture, more prayer, more focus, more discipline, more inner silence, more devotion to your actual path. Let their distortion become your momentum. That is transmutation. It is not passive. It is not weak. It is not avoiding conflict. It is deciding that nothing arriving from outside gets to define the chemistry of your inner world without your consent. And the more you practice this, the less easily disturbed you become. Not because life stops being intense, but because your system becomes skillful. You start recovering faster. You stop carrying conversations into the night. You stop building a shrine to every slight. You stop leaking life force over people who never earned that much access to you. You become harder to poison. Not because you close your heart, but because your heart becomes intelligent. This is where many people begin to look different without understanding why. Their eyes become clearer because they are no longer storing every arrow. Their body softens because it no longer treats every projection like a command. Their energy becomes more magnetic because it is no longer trapped in constant psychic cleanup. They are not untouched by darkness. They are practiced in conversion. And once you learn that, you can survive much more than you thought. But there is still another layer to this. Because sometimes the greatest act of protection is not what you do in the middle of attack. It is where life places you when your system needs shielding. Sometimes isolation was not abandonment. Sometimes it was preservation. One of the most painful seasons in a healing life is the season where everything gets quiet at once. The invitations slow down. The calls become less frequent. Familiar people feel far away. Rooms that used to feel open start feeling strangely closed. And because humans are meaning-making creatures, the mind often interprets that season in the harshest possible way. Something is wrong with me. I am being forgotten. I am being punished. My life is shrinking. Everyone else is moving, and I am stuck here in some lonely, invisible corner. But not every hidden season is rejection. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes life removes you from environments that overstimulate your nervous system before you are even capable of recognizing how much damage they were doing. Sometimes the separation happens before your logic can approve it. Sometimes your spirit needs a quieter room long before your personality is willing to admit it. That is why I want to offer you a gentler reading of isolation. What if the season that felt like exile was actually a greenhouse? A greenhouse does not look impressive from the outside. It looks enclosed, limited, cut off from the weather of the wider world. But inside that enclosure, conditions are being carefully regulated so something tender can recover, strengthen, and grow without being destroyed by the wrong climate. That may be exactly what happened to you, because drama has a biological cost. Chaos has a cost. Performing strength around unsafe people has a cost. Staying available to constant friction has a cost. Living under the gaze of jealousy, gossip, criticism, or emotional unpredictability has a cost. People often talk about stress as if it is only mental. But the body keeps very honest records. It records the conversations where you had to brace yourself. It records the houses where your shoulders never fully relaxed. It records the friendships where your peace was always one comment away from disruption. It records the relationships where you were never allowed to simply be. Only defend, explain, manage, and recover. And over time, that kind of social and emotional weather changes a person. It changes sleep. It changes digestion. It changes muscle tension. It changes hormones. It changes the face. It changes how safe you feel inside your own life. So when God, life, reality, or simple necessity moved you out of certain circles, it may not have been taking something from you. It may have been preserving what constant exposure would have worn down. Peace isn't just an emotion. It is a biological preservative. That line matters even more in lonely seasons, because many people only respect peace when it comes packaged as success. They understand peace after the breakthrough, after the public reward, after the relationship, after the visible blessing. But quiet peace in an isolated season can look empty when it is actually medicine. You may have been in a season where not much was happening on the outside, but everything important was happening underneath. Your nervous system was downshifting. Your body was learning what it felt like not to be in daily combat. Your face was unclenching from years of invisible defense. Your spirit was remembering that safety does not always arrive as excitement. Sometimes it arrives as fewer voices, and yes, that can feel unbearably lonely at first. Because if you are used to chaos, peace can initially feel like deprivation. If you are used to proving, performing, fixing, rescuing, or anticipating conflict, then silence can feel suspicious. You may start craving noise just to avoid meeting yourself. You may even miss people who were harmful simply because your body was accustomed to their disturbance. Familiar dysregulation can feel more natural than unfamiliar calm. That does not mean the quiet season is wrong. It means your system is detoxing. This is where many people accidentally betray their own healing. They interpret solitude as failure and rush back into environments that overstimulate them just so they can feel chosen again. They reopen doors that were closed for a reason. They call the wrong people. They rejoin draining dynamics. They trade restoration for relevance because being seen feels safer than being still. But stillness is where deep repair begins. In stillness, you start hearing your own thoughts more clearly. In stillness, you notice what actually exhausts you. In stillness, your body reveals how long it has been waiting to stop guarding itself. In stillness, grief surfaces. In stillness, anger clarifies. In stillness, truth gets simpler. And that simplicity is part of the anti-aging miracle so many people do not understand. When your body is no longer constantly preparing for emotional ambush, it has more energy for repair. When your mind is no longer chasing 10 unstable people at once, it has more room for coherence. When your spirit is no longer entangled in gossip, comparison, and unnecessary access, your inner world becomes cleaner. That cleanliness shows. It shows in the eyes. It shows in the skin. It shows in the voice. It shows in the way you walk into a room without scattering yourself. That is why people sometimes encounter you after a hidden season and do a double take. Question: who recently did a double take when they saw how good you look? They assume time away made you smaller. But some forms of solitude do the opposite. They gather your life force back from all the places it was leaking. They return you to yourself. They remove the static. They lower the inflammation that drama creates. They protect your peace long enough for your body to believe in safety again. And once the body begins to believe in safety, healing becomes more efficient. That does not mean isolation is always easy or always holy. Some lonely seasons are painful. Some are confusing. Some involve real grief, real abandonment, real disorientation. This is not about romanticizing suffering. It is about refusing to misread every hidden season as meaningless. There are periods where you were not being buried. You were being covered. There are periods where life narrowed your world because too much exposure would have cost you your center. There are periods where your social life got quieter because your cellular life needed relief. There are periods where your prayers felt unanswered. But what was actually happening was filtration. Less noise, less interference, less contamination, more room for your system to come back into alignment. That is why I want you to forgive your lonely seasons. Do not only forgive the people who left. Forgive the season itself. Forgive the months that felt unremarkable. Forgive the emptiness that made you question your value. Forgive the slow days that looked unproductive. Forgive the silence you misnamed as abandonment. Forgive yourself for not understanding at the time that your life was being stabilized. Because some seasons were not punishment. They were an anti-aging protocol. They were a mercy you did not have language for yet. They were your body finally getting a break from emotional climates. It was never designed to endure forever. And when you stop fighting that truth, something softens. You stop being ashamed of the part of your journey that looked less social, less visible, less impressive. You start seeing that the hidden chapter may have saved your peace, your clarity, your health, and your future from becoming entangled with people who would have kept your system inflamed. That perspective changes how you carry the past. Instead of saying, "Why was I left alone?" you begin to ask, "What was being preserved in me while everything got quiet?" That question is powerful because it turns absence into meaning. It lets you see the wisdom inside the withdrawal. It lets you honor the recovery that happened in places nobody applauded. And once you understand that isolation can protect your frequency, the next step becomes practical. Because peace is not only something you discover in hindsight, it is something you maintain through ritual, through cleansing, through daily choices that keep your field clear. You do not fight their poison, you process it into power. And to do that consistently, you need a routine that helps your body and spirit release what the day tried to leave on you. Healing becomes real when it stops being only something you understand and starts becoming something you practice. Because no matter how clear you are, no matter how spiritually aware you become, you still move through a world filled with tension, projection, noise, pressure, and invisible residue. Some days you leave an interaction and feel fine. Other days, something lingers. A comment sticks. A mood follows you home. Your body feels heavier than your thoughts can explain. Your face holds strain you did not consciously choose. Your energy feels crowded. That is why you need a routine. Not because you are fragile, because you are valuable. Anything valuable needs care, and peace is no different. If you do not clear what accumulates, the body starts carrying what the day should have released. And when that happens often enough, you begin living under emotional dust. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just a gradual coating of fatigue, irritability, dullness, and spiritual static. The answer is not paranoia. The answer is rhythm. A simple evening practice can teach your system that the day is over. The field is closing, and what does not belong to you is not coming to bed with you. So let me give you the transmutation routine. A 3-step evening bath or shower ritual, not as superstition, as a physical and spiritual act of release, a way to tell your nervous system, your body, and your inner world, we are returning to ourselves now. Step 1 is intention before water. Before you turn on the bath or step into the shower, pause for one quiet moment. Do not rush past this. Stand still and notice what you are carrying. Maybe it is irritation from a conversation. Maybe it is anxiety that attached itself to your chest. Maybe it is the strange heaviness that comes after being around people who pull at your energy without ever naming it. Name it gently, not with drama, not with fear, just honesty. This tension is not mine to keep. This pressure is leaving my body. This person's projection is not my identity. What came from the day returns to the day. That moment matters because intention organizes release. It keeps cleansing from becoming mechanical. You are not just washing the body. You are directing the body. You are telling it what can go. And this is important because the body listens to repeated signals. If every night ends in scrolling, overstimulation, and mental replay, the system learns to stay open. But if the night begins to carry a pattern of closure, the body starts trusting rest again. It starts cooperating with repair. Step 2 is water with visualization. As the water touches you, do not treat it like an ordinary rinse. Let it become symbolic and physical at the same time. Feel the temperature. Feel gravity. Feel the way water naturally moves things downward and away. This is where you stop thinking only in concepts and let sensation help you complete the release. Visualize everything heavy loosening. The comments that got under your skin. The silent envy in the room. The emotional residue from people who were not at peace. The stress that gathered in your jaw, your shoulders, your stomach, your face. See it leaving in streams. not because water is magical in some performative way, but because the mind responds to imagery. And the body often follows where the mind is directed with consistency. You are teaching your system not to archive every impact. You are giving it a picture of completion. Simple viewer exercise. Smile gently right now and feel the tension leave your face. That softness is part of the ritual too. Let the face unclench under the water. Let the shoulders drop. Let the breath lengthen. Let the day come off you in layers. And if you want a phrase here, keep it simple and repeated. I release what is not mine. I keep my peace. I return to my own energy. If you take baths, this can deepen in stillness. Sit long enough to feel your body stop performing. Let the warmth signal safety. Let the mind settle. Let there be nothing to solve for a few minutes. That alone can be corrective for a system that spends all day anticipating the next disruption. Step 3 is sealing your field after cleansing. This is where many people stop too early. They wash off the day, but then they re-enter the evening energetically open, mentally scattered, and spiritually accessible to whatever wants to attach itself again. Cleansing without sealing can feel good, but it does not always hold. So after the bath or shower, take one final minute. As you dry off or apply lotion or oil, imagine you are not only caring for skin, you are closing the field. Picture your energy becoming coherent again. Not rigid, not defensive, just whole, gathered, yours. You can visualize soft light around the body if that helps. Or simply feel your own presence returning from all the places it got pulled during the day. The goal is not to become obsessed with protection. The goal is to stop living with unnecessary energetic leakage. Say something that completes the ritual. My energy is my own. My home is a place of peace. Nothing from today gets to live in me overnight. That final step teaches the system containment. It tells your body there is a difference between openness and overexposure. It reminds your spirit that peace can be maintained on purpose. Quick recap: you don't fight their poison, you process it into power. That is exactly what this routine does. It turns cleansing into transmutation. It turns the bathroom into a reset point. It turns the end of the day into a place where your body can stop carrying invisible battles. And over time, those small acts change more than mood. They change how you sleep. They change how quickly stress leaves your face. They change how much residue you drag into tomorrow. They change your baseline. This is how peace becomes visible. Not in one dramatic breakthrough, in repeated release, in daily non-cooperation with poison, in the quiet decision to stop letting every encounter write itself into your body. When you live this way, your glow stops being mysterious to you. You understand it. It is not random. It is the result of less internal warfare, less stored tension, less psychic clutter, more closure, more coherence, more devotion to peace than to performance. And the beautiful thing is that this routine does not require perfect conditions. It does not require a perfect house, a perfect life, a perfect income, or a perfectly calm season. It only requires willingness, a few intentional minutes, a decision to stop sleeping in the energy of the day. That is how you protect your youth. That is how you protect your frequency. That is how you stay unbothered without becoming numb. And once that becomes your rhythm, the final truth becomes clear. This whole journey was never only about looking better after survival. It was about becoming the kind of person who no longer lets darkness decide the quality of their light. so now you can see the deeper truth. What changed you was not just survival. It was the way you survived. You were not meant to come through hardship carrying everybody's poison in your body forever. You were meant to learn discernment. You were meant to learn transmutation. You were meant to become someone who can feel energy without becoming ruled by it. That is why you look different now. Not because pain missed you, because peace found you. And the people who do not understand that will keep trying to explain your glow through surface things alone. They will call it luck, timing, appearance, genetics, anything except the truth. But you know better now. You know that every time you refused bitterness, every time you released instead of ruminated, every time you honored the quiet season, every time you cleansed your field instead of feeding the war, you were rebuilding yourself from the inside out. That is real power. You do not fight their poison. You process it into power. So tonight, return to yourself. Let the day leave your body. Let your face soften. Let your spirit come home. And remember this, your healing is not making you weaker, softer in the broken sense, or easier to erase. It is making you clearer. I were calmer, younger in the places that matter, and harder to contaminate. If this message met you at the right time, let it stay with you. Come back to it when the noise gets heavy. And if you are choosing peace in a world that rewards chaos, then you are already doing sacred work.